Hi everybody, Colin from the Bike Dads, and today we're going to be talking about the 5 best premium bicycles for your child to learn to pedal. So if you want to go right to the bikes, I'll put timestamps below. You can look at each individual bike on its own, but if you be patient, I'll take you through why these bikes are so good, what they share in common, and why they're worth that little bit of extra money. I'll put links for all the bikes in the description below. Some of these links will be affiliate links. It helps us a little bit out and allows us to make these videos. If you haven't already, please subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any more content like this. Now, these are all 14-inch wheel diameter bikes. They share that in common. We typically haven't yet seen 12-inch wheeled bikes that really fit the geometry you need to get a kid pedaling comfortably. A 14-inch bike just seems to work better. There's also 16-inch versions of all these bikes that if you have a little bit bigger of a kid or you delayed them from transferring them from the balance bike onto a pedal bike, that is an option. And there's actually some more bikes available in that size of wheel. But for now, we'll stick to these 14-inch wheel bikes. Let's dig into why they're so good. So first of all these bikes are extremely lightweight. They're all between around 12 to 14 pounds, and this really sets them apart from your average department store bike. This is imperative for kids that are small and those that are just learning to ride. That low weight lets them handle the bike. They feel much safer. It's just an easier time for them to learn to pedal a bike. How do they accomplish this? Well, it's an all aluminum frame as well as all aluminum bits when they can. So we're thinking bars and stems, cranks, this kind of thing. All this adds up to a very lightweight package that the kids are able to ride. Some other features of these bikes is that they have a threadless headset. So that's where the actual fork steer tube goes through the frame. We have 2 ball bearings. It's a high quality way to assemble a bicycle. This is awesome because it's going to last a long time and be able to pass through many kids. Also making the longevity of the bike lengthen, all these bikes will use sealed bearings. So that's at the hubs, at the bottom bracket, at the headset. Rain and dust can't get in like open bearings. And probably the biggest shared trait amongst all these bikes is they have a freewheel. So we don't see a coaster brake, the traditional coaster brake where you just apply rear pressure, back pedaling to stop. We see 2 handbrakes and we see a freewheel. This allows the kids to spin freely when learning because kids will pedal backwards for a bit, they'll pedal forward a bit until they get that motion going. A coaster brake makes it really challenging when you compare it to using a freewheel. And component-wise, those brake levers are really easy for the kids to reach. One, they have an adjust on it, and it's an easy pull. All these bikes also have further components that are well thought out for kids. They'll have a really narrow diameter bar and grip combination so the kids can reach their little hands around there comfortably. They'll have a nice small padded seat for small bums. They'll also have a low weight, rotational weight wheel set with fantastic tires. The tires on these bikes are between 1.5 inches wide and 2 inches wide, so lots of stability. The rubber's really good quality as well, so there's grip there and traction when they need it. They're not terribly too wide though, so they're not gonna be slow when they're pedaling down the street. Another thing these bikes all get right is an appropriate gearing ratio. Now these are all single speeds, so you're not gonna have the ability to change gears obviously. So you need to find an appropriate single gear so the kids can both get up light hills, but maintain enough speed when they're pedaling. And these bikes all do that. Now you can get really nerdy and calculate things like gain ratios, which take into account the crank arm length, the wheel diameter, as well as the gearing, but it's not necessary. Just know all these bikes have this dialed. And another shared trait that really distinguishes these bikes from the rest of the crowd is they have these small crank arms. So these short crank arms allow them to do something to the geometry, which most of the other bikes out there, these big department store bikes, just don't do, and is a detriment for kids. These bikes have it nailed with those short crank arms. Those short crank arms allow them to achieve the secret sauce in kids' bicycle geometry, and that's lowering the bottom bracket height. So the bottom bracket is where your crank axle passes through. It's the center of that. Lowering that point in a kid's bicycle allows the bike to be much more stable. You need the short crank arms to achieve this so they don't whack the ground when they're pedaling. But if they do that, The bike can also be more of a upright type positioning for kids learning so that they actually can just put their legs down when they get scared, similar to their balance bike. So this allows them to feel safe. They can skittle with their feet on their tippy toes and then engage the pedals when they're ready to do so and they're well balanced. Now, another thing about those crank arms is that they're close together on these bikes. It's something we call the Q factor. So it's the distance or the width basically between the pedals, if you think like that, between the crank arms. It's narrow, so that allows the kids to be in alignment with their hips to better transfer power to the pedals, and it's just more comfortable. Their feet aren't way spaced out farther apart. They're nice and close together for a comfortable riding position. So when you see those department store bikes, usually they have massive Q factors, long crank arms, and high bottom brackets. So that's why you see these kids with knees ending up in their face when they're trying to pedal. From a geometry perspective, these bikes also share the trait of having lower minimum seat heights than those big department store bikes. So this allows you to squish on really, really small kids on a wheel size that maybe would be too big for them in a traditional department store bike. This is great to take advantage of the bigger wheels. Now we have another video that goes through on what to look for when you're purchasing the first pedal bike. I'll link it right here. There we describe how to fit your child to the bike using inseam measurements and such, so it's worthy of a watch. First up is the Woom. Now this is one of the lightest bikes out of the 5. It's 12.3, 12.4 pounds. It's $359, but you're also gonna have to get an upgraded freewheel kit, so they'll ship you the extra freewheel to install for $19. But this is a really unique bike in that it's lightweight and it's one of the more upright positioned bikes. So it is one of the most friendly positioning of all the bikes for kids learning to pedal. It does have a little bit higher of a minimum seat height compared to some of the other bikes in this list at 16 inches. So be aware of that when you're fitting really, really small kids. Next on the list is the Prevelo Alpha 1. Now this is another fantastic bike. At $369, you're also gonna have to upgrade with a freewheel kit for $29. So keep that in mind. Now this bike at 13.5 pounds with a minimum seat height of 15.6 inches uses standardized parts. So we did all kinds of fun stuff with this. We played around with stems and bars that we had in the garage, and the geometry of this bike makes it very versatile. We even went into the bike park with this bike and rode some trails. Like the other bikes on this list, it has fantastic geometry, a little more upright positioning for the kids when they're just learning. And the frames have some nice features like internal cable routing and stuff. It's things you don't normally see on kids' bikes. Next up is the Spawn Yogi 14. Now this bike is a little more expensive, $479 US. You don't need a freewheel kit, and it only weighs 13.5 pounds. And the thing about this bike is it probably has the lowest minimum seat height going. It uses a BMX style pivotal seat post combination, and they're able to get that minimum seat height down to 14.5 inches. Another bike worthy of this list is the Pello Romper 14 inch. At $359, you're gonna have to get a freewheel kit, an upgraded wheel for $20. But this bike is fantastic. At 14 pounds, it does have a little bit higher of a minimum seat height. We're looking at about 17.5 inches. So again, mindful when you're trying to fit a really small child on this bike, but it offers all these things we've talked about: geometry, small Q factor, all these great things for kids. And rounding out the list is the Early Rider Belter 14. A really unique bike in the fact it uses a belt-driven mechanism, so there's no chain, so it's very easy maintenance. There's no grease or anything like that. It's really light. It comes in at 12.3 pounds, around that area, and it's $419 US. It has a minimum seat height of 15.7 inches, and it uses these 2-inch wide BMX style tires. So we get it, these bikes are very expensive. But if you're able to scrounge up the money up front and pay the little bit extra for the premium bikes, you're gonna get it back when you sell it. These bikes hold their value incredibly. We're talking, you're gonna sell it a year and a half later for 80% of what you paid for it if you take care of it. It really is a no-brainer if you're trying to set your kids up for success, as that first bike and those first few experiences can really set the path for a lifelong passion of bicycling. So for more information on kids' bikes and these bikes specifically, we've got some full reviews on some of these bikes. head to www.thebikedads.com and we'll see you out there.